All right, everybody. The Celtics, they cut it close, but they pull out another victory. 7 wins in a row for the Boston Celtics, this time over the second place Milwaukee Bucks, putting them 11 games. Say it again, 11 games in front for the 1 seed. We're going to break it all down for you. Coming up next here on Green with Envy. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, post-game style. Boston Celtics against the Milwaukee Bucks. Celtics, I guess you can say, escaped after that fourth quarter, which we'll get into here in just a second. 122-119. As always, I'm your boy Will Weir, checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me tonight to help break down this game, we've got my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm trying to think who we owe an apology to from our Bucks pregame talk. Is it Chris Middleton? Is it Svi? Is it Svi who actually played decent in the first half? I don't know. Chris Middleton looked really good tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be a point that I would definitely want to get into. I think he looked more like what I thought could potentially be an issue. I didn't know that thought he was going to look like that, and I thought he was closer to that. But we'll get into a morning box score here in a second, just to reset everything and kind of, put everything into perspective. But I know right now it feels like, at least within in Celtics world, right? The biggest question is going to be what was going on in that fourth quarter, a game that was seemingly in hand, actually very reminiscent of the first Celtics Bucks game that took place at the TD Garden earlier this year. I believe it was the Friday after Thanksgiving when that game went down. And I think, weirdly enough, I'll look it up here in a second. I think it might have been the same exact score. The game ended up at 122-119. But very similar in the sense the Celtics have a double-digit, even up to a 20-point lead at different points in both contests. Both of them get a lot closer late. In fact, the Bucks even cut it to 2 points at one time in the fourth quarter, 116-114. Could have been a point if Bobby Portis makes that free throw on the and one. Ultimately, the Celtics were able to pull away. But starting with the fourth quarter, what do you think happened in that fourth quarter that allowed the Bucks to make a run at this game? Sans Giannis, which, of course, we're going to talk about a bunch. No Giannis in this game. So sans Giannis, what do you think happened in that fourth quarter to allow the Bucks to have a chance at this game late?
Well, they're way more physical. They came out in the zone, right? So the zone kind of threw us off a little bit. The
Tell me if you've
lineup
heard that before.
the lineup that we had out there to start the fourth, I believe, was Cornette and either Horford or Tillman. I think it was
I'll look
Tillman.
that up.
Pretty sure it was Tillman, Tatum, Pritchard, and I can't remember who the last guy
So it
was.
looks like we had so no Jalen, no Al. We did have Tatum, did have Cornette on the court. Pritchard was on the court. Derek White was on the court.
Tillman.
And Tillman. There you go. Yep.
Yeah. So, Pritchard, Tatum, and White all played well tonight, but Cornette was not good. This was
Not
the
a Luke
worst
game.
Luke game in quite some time. Tillman had a nice stint in the first half, but he looked a little bit out of sorts. Like when you go, because that lineup that Tatum normally runs with, right? It's usually Tatum, White, Pritchard, Cornette, and then Sam, right? So when you take Sam off of that lineup and you lack the extra shooter that really spaces things out, Tillman, I mean, what was he from 3 to 9? Like 0 for 4, maybe 0 for 3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let me see here. He was only 0 for 2, but yeah,
okay.
I get your point.
Yeah, I mean the spacing for Tillman, he doesn't provide any spacing, right? Luke was just completely out of sorts all game tonight. They were attacking him in the first half. I was surprised that he even had minutes in the second half. I think they were trying to just avoid Dame time with Luke on the court. That's what it seemed like they were trying to do in the second half. He was getting torched in the pick and roll. I think it's a combination of that lineup and not really having much chemistry together because Tillman, I think, kind of threw a wrench in it, plus Luke not playing well tonight. And then the zone that they just sat in the entire fourth quarter. They played a zone the entire fourth quarter. And the Celtics just missed shots, honestly. They were 3 for 9 from 3 in the fourth quarter. I think that they got a lot of wide open shots. Derek White missed 2 wide open threes. Kristaps Porzingis missed a wide open corner 3. Jason Tatum missed a wide open 3. So they were still getting good shots. It's just, that you want them to be able to get an easy bucket, and the easy bucket that they did get was that Al Horford and one where Joe Mazzulla probably should have challenged it, but they called offensive
I
foul.
thought so too, right? That
Yeah, that
did
was like a
not
pretty
look like a
clear,
charge to me, but yeah.
no, pretty clear
Well,
non card.
actually, was that before or after the really bad challenge that Missoula had?
That was before.
That was before. Okay, that was a
Yeah,
horrible challenge afterwards. I don't
yeah,
know what
yeah,
what
yeah.
what we were doing on that.
That's on Derek White though. Derek White told him to challenge it, and he
Yeah, but you
challenged.
can't listen. The players tell you to challenge everything. Like you can't listen to
But
them.
it's Derek White, right? So if
That's
Derek
fair.
White
There's certain
says,
guys that you do hold a different respect. That's fair.
right, right. So I think that was the one play. If Joe challenges that, I think it was a 13-point game at that time that would have made it to 15 and one opportunity to get to 16. Dame comes down, hits a step back 3 over Tatum. It's a 10-point game, right? So that was a big 6-point swing in that moment that I think allowed them to hang on. And then Bobby Portis went full Dean Wade.
The Dean Wade game turning into the Bobby Portis game. Yeah, Bobby Portis has had some really nice moments. He had 31 points the other day against Phoenix in that big win that they had without Giannis against them. But it's interesting with the zone defense. And Bobby Portis for 15 rebounds this game. Jesus, 24 and 15. I'll do a box score here in just a second, but just focusing on the zone for a second. I think you're right that they got good shots. I think one thing for me is it felt like it did get a little stagnant. Like there just wasn't a lot of movement in that zone. Nobody was really like it was kind of like what you would do in a CYO game almost, where it's like you move the ball around the perimeter. Like, when Porzingis was in, they did get it back into the nail a little bit and at least operate, from that position. But it was kind of swinging it around. And yeah, they got a look towards the end of the shot clock. But until the end of the game, when Tatum reasserted himself as driving some of those slots or some of those, trying to take the ball into the middle or taking it to the hoop, there was just a little bit too much standing around for me. That was the one thing that I thought jumped out to me a little bit, is that even though they were getting good shots, it was pretty motionless for the most part.
Yeah, and they weren't manipulating the defense and making the zone rotate, right? They were kind
Right.
of just making the easy pass to the next guy and allowing the zone just to shift in time with the passing versus
Mhm.
getting them in rotation.
They didn't put
Second,
any pressure on the zone. This is
yeah,
why they sat in it the whole time, because they didn't feel pressure to get out of it. But let's jump into a quick morning box score here, just so we can set this game up here and kind of reset for everyone that's listening. So as we do here, morning box score: Boston Celtics come away with the victory, 122-119 against the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's start with the Bucks here. Greg, you mentioned Chris Middleton. I do want to get into him here in a little bit. He was still on a quasi minutes restriction, but ended up playing just under 33 minutes, 8 of 11 from the field, 2 of 3 from the 3-point line. He had 22 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block. Did have 4 turnovers, but a pretty solid game from Chris Middleton. Dame Lillard, who I thought was pretty controlled or kept under control by the Celtics in the first half, ended up having some moments in this one. 11-21 overall, 6 of 10 from the 3-point line. He finishes with 32 points and 6 assists. We mentioned Bobby Portis, big night off the bench for him. He's a very key player. I think when we look at these two teams in a series, Bobby Portis is another guy that I think could play a very important role. 11 of 20 from the field for him, 24 points and 15 rebounds. A really solid night from Bobby Portis. Let's go over to the Celtics, and let's start with Jayson Tatum. 9 of 19 from the field, 4 of 7, most of this damage being done in the first half. 9 of 10 from the free throw line, 31 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks, really filling up the stat sheet. Kristaps Porzingis, 6 of 16, but 0 of 5 from 3. Really just one of those nights where he could not find the shot from 3-point range. 17 points, though, for him, only 3 rebounds, but one of the biggest rebounds on the night with that offensive rebound late in the fourth. Jaylen Brown, 21 points for him to go along with 8 rebounds. 7 of 10 from the free throw line, missed 2 in the fourth that nearly gave me a heart attack, but then made the 2 that really mattered soon thereafter, so did redeem himself just a little bit. Derek White also 23 points tonight to go along with 5 rebounds and 8 assists, and then a really just massive game from Payton Pritchard. Ends up playing 32 minutes in this game, 7 of 11 from the field, 5 of 8 from 3, had 19 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and was absolutely the heart and soul of this team for many moments tonight. And then we'll talk about some of the bigs here in just a minute. But Greg, what's the first part that you want to jump into? Do you want to talk about how Chris Middleton looked? Do you want to talk about the night
Talk
Payton
about
Pritchard
Pritchard.
has? Okay, let's go there. Tell me your thoughts on the big night from Payton Pritchard.
So we mentioned when we gave our like mini preview, we only spent a couple minutes talking about it. How would Payton Pritchard fare in this game now that there is a matchup for him, right? We
Right.
talked about Pat Bev, and we said that, because the Bucks kind of historically have had a ton of size, their point guard last year was Drew Holiday. He can't really have Payton Pritchard on the court against a Drew Holiday. When you got Lopez and Giannis on the court, they can go really big jumbo lineups, right? So with Dame Lillard now on the court, where Payton Pritchard can feel, he can attack Dame Lillard. Pat Bev on the court, where Payton Pritchard can't get exposed on the defensive end with his size, even though Payton Pritchard is fighting his ass off on defense these days. This was a game where I was just interested to see, matchup wise, could Pritchard play in a big game against the Bucks? Because that's been my concern. For those of you that have been listening to the podcast, I've been worried, how is Payton Pritchard going to fare in a game 7, right? Is he going to be able to make an impact in a huge closeout game? And against certain teams with size, Payton Pritchard has been unable to do that, where he just can't get his shot off. He gets exposed on the defensive end. Teams hunt him. So I was really looking forward to seeing how he played tonight. And he's been playing his best basketball of his career coming into tonight, and he continued it. He was absolutely on fire. He was attacking every single person that stepped in front of him. He saw Danilo Gallinari in front of him, lunch meat. He saw Brook Lopez in front of him, lunch meat. Whoever it was that was in front of him, Payton Pritchard was attacking them and getting wherever he wanted. He even had, the Payton Pritchard baseline bully drives are now
Oh, I love
becoming
those.
a thing.
Those are
Where he
great.
bullied Pat Connaughton and
Mhm.
got that little layup, where he's starting to really kind of develop some grown man strength. And it's really nice to see out of Pritchard, because I was worried about him. But after tonight, I think in the Eastern Conference, I don't know which team could give him issues. It would probably be an NBA Finals matchup where he might struggle with size. But I think in the East, he
Yeah.
might be okay if he can get through the Bucks. But Giannis can play, obviously.
Right, Giannis did play. And that's the big caveat hanging over all of this conversation. And we'll talk about that at the end, as well as what that might change. But I think the game tonight, I'm not expecting this type of game out of Payton Pritchard, throughout the Eastern Conference plays, but he's capable of it. This is kind of the biggest point, is that he is capable of a night like tonight, where he's a big swing factor, not just with his play, but also with the way that he engaged the crowd. And the crowd was really into it, in that first half. And that's why, as we've had those discussions about trading for Alex Caruso, you're totally right. And I admitted to this when we were going over the Nuggets game a week or two ago. It felt like, ooh, this is exactly what Greg was looking at right now. When you think about, could Caruso versus Pritchard, like Caruso can play in this game, Pritchard can't really play in this game. Pritchard's going to be able to play in like 90% of series. I feel like 90 to 95% of series. It's going to be a few matchups that are not great, but that's why you have, ideally, Derek White, Drew Holiday, like you're Jayson Tatum. You have other guys that can handle the ball. You have plenty of shooting. Like, you should still be able to get by in that scenario. But I think in games like tonight, and I think in matchups like the Bucks and like most of the matchups that we're going to see in the Eastern Conference, there's going to be a role for Payton Pritchard. There's going to be opportunities for Payton Pritchard. And tonight he was awesome. And I think coinciding with Payton Pritchard's awesome night, I want to shout out Joe Mazzulla for riding the hot hand. I thought that was something that, I don't know if that was, I doubt that was part of the game plan, was for him to play basically almost the whole first half, from the time that he subbed in mid to late through the first quarter. Whenever he came in, Pritchard basically played almost all
Well,
of
no
the
Sam,
first
no
half.
Drew.
No Sam, no Drew. So that does edit it. That does change it a little bit. Of course, that's a good point. But seeing Payton get the minutes that he did tonight, I thought that was fun to see. That Mazzulla was cool with, like, hey, Payton's hot, let's roll. And you're right. Maybe without the injuries, maybe that's not the case. We don't know, but I mean, Tatum's been playing the whole first quarter. He didn't play the whole first quarter today. Mazzulla did do some different things with his lineups today, and one of them was Pritchard's feeling it. Pritchard feels like a guy that, if you wanted to, Pritchard feels like one of those Energizer bunnies. Like, if you were playing pickup with him, he'd be the guy that runs 12 games in a row, and you're like, okay, I think he's tired now. Let's go get him. And he's still got more energy than you playing your first or second game, right? He's that type of dude. And so Mazzulla riding the hot hand, I thought that was a great move in the first half with Pritchard, and allowed him to continue to build on the momentum that he had.
Yeah, it's nice to see him go up against a guy like Pat Bev and completely dominate the matchup, right? Because Pat Bev's a vet, and as much as you can hate on the dude for just being annoying as hell, there's a reason he's stuck in the league for so long, right? Pat Bev can make an impact and he can really be a thorn in your side. And Payton Pritchard seemed to take that matchup personally. Not sure if Pat Bev had been talking some shit on a podcast or anything like that, but Payton Pritchard was going
I
at
actually
him.
feel like Pritchard would be a dude based on, and I've only seen clips of Pat Bev's podcast. It feels like a dude that he would actually like, that he would like, he would like playing against a guy like Pritchard.
Right. But Pat Bev thinks he's way better than Payton Pritchard.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And I think Pritchard is out for blood this year in terms of like backup guards in the league. I think Payton Pritchard wants to assert himself as one of the best backup guards in the league. And I think tonight was a nice step forward in that after 2 games against subpar, barely NBA teams, right? Payton Pritchard shows up against one of the best teams in the league, even though they didn't have their MVP. But the next guy I want to talk about is Jayson Tatum. It's very easy to give Jayson Tatum his flowers every single game because he always plays well. But tonight he really set the tone. And you mentioned how he came out with 6 minutes left, kind of his normal routine substitution in the first quarter, and had me thinking about the substitution patterns before we talk a little bit more about Tatum's game. My theory has been that they're trying to match certain people's minutes with guys on the other team. Jaylen Brown had the Dame Lillard assignment tonight.
Yeah,
Dame plays the whole first quarter. Jaylen played the whole first quarter to match up with that. So I'm wondering if that's more evidence that that's what they're doing there. But with Tatum, he didn't score a point in the third quarter. I don't think he scored a point in the fourth quarter until about three minutes left when nobody could hit a shot, and they just went to Tatum. Tatum in the fourth quarter, by the way, 1 for 6 from the field, 6 for 6 from the line. Overall. So, he didn't shoot well.
Yeah.
He did take it to the
that was his only
rack.
field goal of the entire second half. Yeah.
Yeah. But I liked what I saw out of him in the first half. Came out on fire. Jaylen got hot in the third, so we kind of stepped back and just let Jaylen do his thing. And he focused on the defense, right? 3 steals, 2 blocks. That's what you want to see out of Tatum. He only had 2 turnovers tonight. Middleton, who we can talk about here in a second, actually played pretty good D on Tatum a few times in isolation. But I thought Tatum, won his matchup tonight, and he was the best player on the court.
Yeah, I mean, especially in that first half, Tatum was just on a different level, right? Like that was once again, and I think this happened in a game recently where it's like, man, this feels like this is a 40 ball coming from JT, and then he kind of takes a step back. And I think for me, there was a moment where I was like, I kind of wish there was still JT almost forcing the issue. And this is a little bit towards what I was saying with the zone, where it was a lot of JT surveying around, couple of feet back from the 3-point line, and then we would move the ball once or twice, get an open look, get not a bad look for this team, but we wasted too much time to get a better look. We could have been a little bit more assertive. I think there's a few moments where Tatum could have done that, and then he certainly did that the last 2-3 minutes after it was established that nobody was making a shot, and then Tatum gets to the free throw line basically 6 times in the last 2 to 3 minutes of the game. But yeah, another good night from Tatum all around. 31, 8, 4, 3, 2, just filling it up all around. I want to go to Jaylen Brown here for a minute. And, Jaylen Brown, like you said, he got it going in the third quarter, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 6 of 15, 7 of 10 from the free throw line. I mentioned the 2 misses in the fourth, but then he made 2 in the fourth as well. So I want to make sure that we mention both of those here. Missed 2, made 2. Decent night for him offensively, but I think defensively is where this is a much more interesting topic for Jaylen Brown tonight. And I loved the way he came out so aggressively guarding Damian Lillard. And one thing the Celtics did really well up until probably they got a little bit relaxed was, and this was all through the tone that Jaylen Brown set, is that they were not going to let the Bucks screen them into mismatches or let the Bucks, at least with ease, get to matchups that they wanted to get to, specifically with Dame. And you saw in the first half, I think there was 2 or 3 different offensive fouls called on the Bucks for moving screens after Jaylen Brown set the tone very early on that he was going to fight through every single screen that Brook Lopez or Bobby Portis, whoever it might be that's setting that screen. Jaylen was fighting over it, trying to avoid it, before they could even get to it. And I thought his defense on Dame was pretty damn good. I'm excited. I'm interested to see what the data will say about him versus Dame when that loads later tonight. But I thought Jaylen was pretty good on Dame tonight defensively. What was your take on him taking on that assignment?
Well, I mean, it just goes to show you the continued commitment to on-ball pressure defense that Jaylen Brown has committed to this year that we saw last season against the Sixers in the playoffs, picking up James Harden 94 feet, right? That's where it really started with Jaylen Brown deciding that this was going to be a new part of his game and that he was going to do it on a night-to-night basis. So the consistency with Jaylen is not ducking any matchups where he sees the best player on the other team and he says, I want that matchup, and there were a few times where you see the limitations of a guy who doesn't quite have the quick twitch muscles that a Derek White has or a Drew Holiday has, where Dame was able to lose him on some screens and just run him through the maze of screens that Dame Lillard likes to go at the top of the key, especially with a behemoth like Brook Lopez setting those screens. It's really tough to get around those screens, right? But just Jalen's willingness stood out to me. And then end of the game, right, where Dame there's this one play, Dame ends up with a layup on Jaylen, but they run this little action on the side, like a dribble handoff action, and it was Tatum and Brown involved in the action. I thought they should have just switched it, which was interesting to me that Jaylen wanted the matchup so bad that they didn't switch as willingly as I think they should have. With some of that, I think is maybe that's scheme, maybe that's ego. I'm not sure, but there were a few things where if I was watching tape with Jaylen Brown or with Joe Mazzulla, I'd be like, hey, why are we not just switching the obvious wins here where you can just get Tatum on Dame,
right? When it's not Horford or Porzingis or Luke, like those ones, yeah, let's try to avoid the switch. But if it's Tatum or it's White or it's Holiday, if Holiday were playing, like let's live with those. Those we're happy to switch into.
Exactly. But then the next time Dame gets an opportunity to ISO on Jaylen stays high side, doesn't allow him to shoot the step back three, allows him to get to his right and stays connected to that left hip, and then contests high, contests late on Dame Lillard, forces a missed layup where Dame, could have. I forget what the score was at that point, but it was a big moment, and
I thought he might have blocked it at first. I don't think he actually did, but it looked like he might have got to it. Dame just put it up really high.
Yeah, definitely contested it, and those are the plays that really stand out to me about Jaylen Brown. Is that the really quick guards, the shifty guards that we've had trouble with in the past. Jaylen wants those matchups, and he's big enough and strong enough and athletic enough to contest late from behind if he gets beat and is able to stay high side on the 3-pointer. Because everybody else in the team just couldn't figure out that Dame Lillard likes to go to a step back three, and we just decided to let him shoot step back threes in the second half. It's like, this is literally what he does. Just continue to play high side, funnel him to the middle, and make him finish over length. That's what you have to do with Dame Lillard, and
he'll finish a couple of them, but make him do it time and time again rather than getting to that step back. Because he's one of those dudes. This is what I always say. There's no, Dame Lillard's in that category of dudes where there's no flat out just stopping Dame, right? How do you make his life harder on him each and every time? And he'll get you a couple times. Like we've seen that with Kevin Durant. We've seen that with other guys. Like Dame's in that type of class. He's not necessarily at his peak anymore, but especially when he's playing without Giannis, I do think he seems to play a little bit more free because it is a little bit more used to the style he's played in Portland all these years. Because he hasn't had, multiple bigs that are going to be down and around the paint when he gets down there. So when they're 5 out, as they were playing, especially towards the end of the game, Dame's like, okay, if I can just get downhill, I'll have room here, right? Or he's going to try to get to that step back. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think Dame hit a couple of tough shots, even though he got to where he wanted to go. But that's been Dame's whole career, is hitting tough shots. That's how he's made his name.
Yeah, and this is Dame's shot chart from the second half there.
Yep.
So you see most of his attempts coming from beyond the arc. Most of those are step back threes. And he was 7 for 11 in the second half there. In the first half, if we just filter this out, see the difference here with Dame. He was 40% from the field, only 3 3-pointers in the first half. So the Celtics
and
did
I think he was
job.
2 of 8 to start the game. So at the very beginning of the game, Celtics were doing a great job on him, and then it got a little bit more lax, as it went on. And part of that was, there were moments, I think, towards the end of that first half, and then when Luke came back in, he was attacking Luke and stuff off the dribble as well, getting downhill against guys like that. Like we said, not a Luke night. I do want to point out once again, I think, his stat line for Al Horford tonight, 8 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, kind of a solid night, but he's also the team leader at plus 15. Like, I do still believe 100% that and this is obviously no Giannis, but I think add Giannis in, he's even more important. Like, in series against the Bucks, in series against the Nuggets, and teams that have that type of size, I still think Al Horford is one of the most important players the Celtics are gonna have in those series. And you see he played 38 minutes tonight. This is a heavy minute game for Al Horford and ends up with that plus 15. And even though he doesn't have a box score that's gonna jump out to you, I still think he's going to be really, really important in this type of series.
Yeah, and he's gonna be really important against any team that likes to spam high pick and roll,
Hmm.
right? Because especially when you juxtapose that with Porzingis and Cornette, who play in the deep drop. Horford's the one big, Tillman. We have him now but he's not, he's a little undersized there. But Horford can come up to the level of the screen and just make life a little bit more difficult on the pick and roll. So that's why Al Horford still has such value because he's not a drop big. He's a guy that can play up to touch or up to the level of the screen and fire back if he needs to get back to his man in a pick and roll. But the Porzingis -8 versus the Horford +15, I think a lot of that has to do with the way that Miami likes to operate in pick and roll, especially with somebody as crafty as Dame Lillard. So I think that's why you see the value of Al Horford against guys like this. It's going to be very valuable against Jalen Brunson when we go up against the
Right.
Knicks if we see them. So I think Horford, yeah, I think he has immense value for this team. Anytime he's asked to start, he steps into his role and does whatever the team needs of him. And can't say enough about Al Horford. He was amazing tonight. Is there
Yeah.
anybody else on the C's you want to touch on?
No one else in the season. I kind of want to go over to the Bucks perspective for a little bit. There's two real things I want to talk about with the Bucks, and one that we've been alluding to is Chris Middleton. And let's talk a little bit about him because we had a breakout video from the other day, which you want to check that full conversation out. It's on our YouTube page.
Did
Go and
we
hit that up.
inspire Chris Middleton's play tonight?
We may have, honestly. We may have because he looked pretty damn good tonight.
He
This
did.
is the Middleton that when you factor Giannis back in this lineup and they don't have to play the Gallows, the AJ Greens, they can cut down some of these other minutes that they have here, and Giannis is going to make up for some of the ineptitude on defense at different points. Like this version of Middleton paired with Lillard and paired with Giannis, this is where I think the Bucks start to have a chance. I still think the Celtics. I'm picking the Celtics. I'll tell you that right now. I'm picking the Celtics in the series, but this is where I think the Bucks start to have a chance because now Middleton gives you another guy that you can operate pick and roll with, another guy that can knock down shots, another guy that can create off the dribble. And tonight he was 8 of 11. He got to the line 5 times. 22 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. I think when he's right, he's also a very underrated facilitator. I mean, he was basically the main pick and roll partner for Giannis for the last 3 years until Dame Lillard got there. And when he's healthy, he was super effective with it. And so if he's actually healthy and can give you 30 to 35 minutes of this type of production with both Dame and Giannis on the court, I think it makes the Bucks easily the scariest competition to the Celtics in the East.
Oh, for sure. This was the healthiest I've seen Middleton in years. He looked really good. He was moving well on both ends of the court. He had the lift back on his shot. Defensively, he was locked in. The Celtics weren't able to expose him on the defensive side of the ball like they have been in the past. He's held up nice against Tatum. He stripped him. It may have been a foul on that strip. I think that's where Tatum ended up getting the technical foul. But Middleton was moving his feet well. He was being physical with Tatum. And this is what I was talking about with the rule changes that we've seen, where the emphasis with the refs allowing a little bit more physicality on drives is it's going to allow guys that may have lost a step to regain that in physicality, right? You saw Jay Crowder didn't have a great night tonight, but he was able to just kind of hang in there for 15 minutes. Chris Middleton is able to be a little bit more physical. The Bobby Portises of the world, the Pat Connaughtons of the world, all these guys that rely on physicality on the defensive end. And I think that's what you saw in the fourth quarter is that they were really getting into the Celtics jerseys anytime the Celtics decided to, as you said, not move the ball and just try and like dump the ball into Porzingis at the nail and try and take advantage of a mismatch. It seems like teams are starting to get a little bit more leeway from the referees manhandling Porzingis at the nail,
Yeah.
which might take away a little bit of
There was
that.
a Connaughton possession that's specifically sticking out to me where he was basically just under his jersey, just pushing up against him, and ended up. I think Porzingis took a tough contested shot where he probably was fouled, but to your point, they're letting it go.
Yeah, they're letting it go, and that's a little concerning if you're the Celtics because that was such a cheat code earlier in the year, and if they officiate that differently, that could take away some of the effectiveness of it. But yeah, Middleton was great, man. We gave him a lot of shit. I know he's a great player. I just thought he was washed and injured. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And if he's able to play like this, and this was your point that you made on the last pod, if they get this version of Chris Middleton, that's a big difference because you cannot survive with Dame Lillard and Malik Beasley being as bad of defenders as they are and Chris
right.
Middleton being not as good of a defender as he used to be, right? But you can survive if Chris Middleton is able to be a plus defender, even an average defender, because Dame can't guard anybody. Malik Beasley can't guard anybody.
Mhm.
If you have Brook Lopez and Giannis and even Bobby Portis is a decent
Right.
defender. And Connaughton's a good defender. Pat Bev's a good defender. So they have guys now that they can throw out there to just muck things up for a team like the Celtics that likes to play as a front runner. Let's be honest, the Celtics are a little bit of a front runner and like to play with a lot of rhythm. And if you can disrupt that rhythm, like the Bucks can do, like the Knicks, I'm sure are going to do, like the Heat, I'm sure are going to do, like
Yep.
even someone like the Magic, I'm sure are going to do. The Celtics are going to have to figure out ways to not let teams take them out of their rhythm and then completely spiral out of control like we saw tonight where we almost blew the 20-point lead.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is what's your counter punch to that, right? Like how do you get yourself out of that? And so, we'll see. We'll have to see how that plays out because that's going to be what every team is gunning to do. But last thing on this, and then we can wrap up here for the night. So watching this game, no Giannis, and we do play the Bucks one more time, but it's right towards the end of the season. Celtics are likely going to they'll definitely have the 1 seed in the East wrapped up. Potentially, they'll already have the 1 seed for home court advantage throughout all playoffs wrapped up by that point, as they also have about a 7-game lead, I believe, on the Thunder for that. So that'll be another big game coming up here in a couple weeks. But so this might be my point being, this is probably the last time we're going to see them as close to healthy or playing as much of their guys. If Giannis is in this game with everything that we saw tonight, what do you think is the biggest difference? And take that where you will, because it's Giannis. It's obviously a massive difference, but how much does that change the landscape of as much of these full look teams that we could get tonight? Throw in Giannis. How much does that change things?
I mean, I think it completely changes just like the way the game is played tonight. It changes the space on the court for both teams. The Bucks run the offense through Giannis a lot more. You're probably seeing a lot less Dame centric stuff, a lot less Chris Middleton centric stuff. I think without Giannis on the court, they have to step up into their roles. Celtics also didn't have Drew tonight, so I know Giannis is a different level of player, but you can't forget that. I think with the defensive side of things, I was really looking forward to watching this game because I haven't tuned into as much Bucks basketball as maybe I have in the past. So I just wanted to see how their defense under Doc with Pat Bev, with Giannis, with Chris Middleton. I wanted to see how it all looked and whether or not I would think that they could actually give us a run in the Eastern Conference Finals because I still think the Celtics are a heavy favorite, but I think with Middleton being back, that's probably if the Celtics, if I was going to give them like an 80% chance of winning that series, I'd probably move it down all the way to like 65%. I think that because Giannis is so damn good, you see what Dame can do in crunch time, and then Middleton being Middleton could make a real difference. But I still think the Celtics talent wins out. But to the point of many people, best player in the series more often than not will win out. And as much as Jayson Tatum can be the best player in the series, Giannis is the best player in that series, right? So it makes a big difference.
Yeah, 2-1 versus Giannis so far for the record, just in playoff scenarios. But yeah, it will be different, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot over the next couple of days as this game gets broken down on various podcasts across the country. Hey, I'm riding the Bucks right now. Imagine if they had Giannis in that game. They lost by 3 without him. Like that's going to be what you'll hear, I think, from a lot of people. But We'll see. I do think if this comes down to the conference finals, regardless of how many games the Celtics finish ahead in the regular season, this will be a heavyweight fight come playoff time. And I think it'll be a hell of a series. I'm with you. I'm probably 65, 70% that I think the Celtics are going to pull this out. Because like you said, can't forget Drew Holiday not in there tonight. That is a big, big part of this as well. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But Celtics 7 wins in a row right now, right back to being the best team in the league here. Now up to, is it 54 or 55 wins?
55 and 14. Before we wrap up, Will, I
Yeah.
have one question. Just let me see if I can find this tweet. How much did you tweet during the game tonight? Because I just got to
A
figure out
handful of times.
a handful of times. So it shouldn't be
Yeah, like 4 or 5 times.
too far down
Also,
here.
while you're looking this up,
I
just
got
quick
it.
shout out to our homegirl, Amina Smith. It was her last night at NBC Sports Boston. So shout out to the homie, the curator of vibes, moving on to ESPN. Hopefully she doesn't forget about her boys over here agreeing with Envy. So we will be reaching back out to her. There it is.
Okay. I just don't get this. Okay, so there, for those of you that are listening on the pod, there was a tweet from Film Updates at Film Updates. Who is your dream casting for the coveted James Bond role? And Will from our Green with Envy Twitter account tweets out a picture of Kristaps Porzingis at Disney World. And like, why? Why do you think Kristaps Porzingis is a good James Bond?
I don't really. I just kind of saw this and I was like, oh, this would be funny if I have a good picture in my film roll to like put out there. And then I kind of just got tired of looking and I was like, oh, this is a funny Kristaps photo. Let me see if it works. And then I just
Okay,
put it out
so
there.
if you really needed to choose which Celtics player could actually be James Bond, who are you choosing?
Al Horford.
Al Horford.
Dude, those stunning eyes, you kidding me?
Interesting.
When he has to do the little like cufflinks look and Al gives you that stare. Yeah, fuck yeah, it's Al Horford. Who would you go with?
I mean, first thought is Tatum, just because he's a handsome dude,
Yeah.
one. And secondly, he's shown that he's actually a pretty good actor. You know, he's a little bit more humorous, like the understated deadpan humor that Jason Tatum has.
Wait,
Like
where is he
his
showing that he's a good actor? I mean, let me ask this. From his
um,
commercials?
well, when he's in the video with Kevin Hart.
The interview he did with like in the coldest balls?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
acting.
Yeah, I guess it's acting.
He's
Okay.
being funny. You know, he's being funny. He's showing a sense of humor. So he's comfortable on camera. How about that, Will? Is that better for you?
Yeah, I'll take that a little bit better.
Okay. Jason Tatum is comfortable on camera. You know, probably look really good in a suit. I think Jason Tatum would
Definitely
probably
agree
be
on that.
that guy.
Yeah, he was the second guy I was thinking in my head.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who else could actually pull it off. If you're looking for like a stunt man, I know he's not on the team anymore, but that's Marcus Smart all the way. You know, Marcus Smart would be doing his own stunts during that. Joe Mazzulla, being the jiu-jitsu master that he is, doesn't quite have the looks to pull off James Bond. Sorry, Joe. But I'm trying to think if there's anybody else on the team that could potentially pull it off. I don't want just like the pure white James Bond, like Sam Hauser could, I guess, pull it off.
I mean, listen, I put up a goofy picture because I was like, let me see if this is apparently it wasn't very funny, but let me see let me see if this let me see if this works. But you know, Kristaps is, as someone pointed out, probably more suited for the villain role, given that it's usually like, you know, Western European centric or Western Eastern European centric of like that type of villain. But
Yeah,
Kristaps Porzingis looks damn good when he's rocking those suits and he comes
he
out.
does.
Like he could pull that shit off as like James Bond from that aesthetic view. Like he could. I mean, he's 7'4", so not exactly going to blend in many places. But then again, none of these guys that we're talking about are.
Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up, because I've never heard this before, but you referred to our girl Amina Smith as a homette, and
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody refer to a homegirl as a homette. And I
Yo,
just wanted to
shout out.
know where did you hear this term, and how long have you been using it?
Well, you know, this is not the best advertisement for the Discord right now, but shout out to our guy Fred in the Discord who dropped this, and I told him I was gonna steal it from him
Okay,
for calling Amina Smith the homette. So I told him in the Discord I liked it and I was gonna steal it. So used it tonight on Twitter to shout her out as her farewell night on NBC Sports Boston. So Fred,
there you go.
big ups to you, my
Shout
guy.
out to Fred.
And for those of you who are in the Discord, I'll read them at least. I'll read them and I'll shout you out here. So make sure if you guys are following with us, jump in the Discord, come have some fun. But that's going to do it for this episode, this post-game edition of Green with Envy. Celtics 122, Bucks 119, winners of 7 straight. Tomorrow, so if you listen to this, we're recording this on Wednesday night. Thursday, as always, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central. We'll be live on Twitter and YouTube. We will have the 3-man weave in full effect. So make sure you come join us. We'll be doing a lot of fan interaction there. I'm sure we'll talk about this game some more with our guy, Adam, as well as any news that may come out from after the game. So make sure you guys are locked in. Come join us. Bring a friend. Bring some questions. We'll have some fun. Greg, any final thoughts before we send it over to some Black Sheep Optimists?
I just gave you my final thoughts.
All right. Well, there it is, folks. We'll see you guys later. Peace.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
You cut me to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jayson Tatum fade away. I close my eyes and I'm floating your river. I call to see if you open, you know I hope you